So we're going to talk about tzedakah. Now, a friend might ask, tzedakah, it seems to be there's nothing to it. It's the most natural, simplest thing. You put some money in a charity box, or you give money to a poor person. Like, what's the way to talk about tzedakah? Truth is, I was a little surprised. I thought there wouldn't be so much in the Rambam about tzedakah. Usually the Rambam spends like a couple paragraphs about every halacha. He gives like four chapters all about tzedakah. That's like more than he does. Gives a lot of mitzvot. Truth is, tzedakah, says the Rambam, is we have to be more careful about tzedakah more than any other positive mitzvah in the Torah. And he says why? Because the very foundation of the Jewish people was from, who was the first Jew? Was Abraham. And Abraham's whole life work and what he passed on to his children was all about tzedakah. It's a fundamental of what it means to be Jewish. It's a very, Rambam says he never found any Jewish community that did not have a very active fund to take care of people in need. Now, and not only to Jewish people, the story brought down in the Talmud, I believe, that Bar Kapara once saw a Roman who was shipwrecked, and he came onto the shore, and a lot of people were making fun of him. He was wearing rags, and you can tell he looked like someone who had just been washed ashore. And he gave him some money, gave him food, gave him clothing, and Bar Kapara sent him on his way. And it turned out later there were captured people, and he was going to free them. And it turns out this Roman was in charge of these captured Jews, and he actually said, I won't, instead of keeping the money for freeing the captives, he said, you actually take it yourself. So Bar Kapara actually became well-to-do from the story. That's how it ended. What's interesting is the most important tzedakah is not actually to poor people at all. The most important tzedakah is to someone who's not poor. Not yet poor, someone who's struggling and needs, like, he's a cash flow problem, or he needs a little bit of money, he needs a loan. That's the best tzedakah in the world. Why? For two reasons. First of all, it's very important in tzedakah not to embarrass a person by giving him tzedakah. And over here, the person is like, he doesn't want to be taking. He really doesn't want, people to find out his situation. He doesn't want to take. So if you give him this loan, or you give him a job, or you help him out, that's the best thing, because he never had to have to take, which is the best tzedakah. And you're helping him support himself, which is the highest level of tzedakah. Another concept of tzedakah is that the reason why tzedakah is very important is because the goal of being a Jew, and the reason what mitzvahs are all about, is to make a person be like Hashem, be close to Hashem. We're close to Hashem by fulfilling His mitzvot. We become close to Hashem by becoming like Hashem. And Hashem is the ultimate giver. He gives food to the billions and trillions of organisms every single day. And by us giving tzedakah, we become like Him. And it's actually better to give a lot of tzedakah more than once, because the more tzedakah we give, the more it changes us into being a kinder person. And that's one reason why tzedakah is so important. In terms of levels of tzedakah, the most important, there are priorities as well. The biggest obligation are those who are closer to oneself. The closer a person is, the greater obligation is to give. The most important obligation to support is one's parents. Actually, not actually tzedakah when actually it's because it's not like it's not charity. It actually owes one's parents more than anything. But it's the number one has to take care of those closer to oneself more than anyone else. And when supports one's parents, one can't give. There's a concept of giving a tenth of one's possession, of one's income, to tzedakah, which is called maaser ksafim. And that's not an obligation, complete obligation. It's certainly a good thing to do if one's able to do it. and there are those who say there are different opinions about how much the obligation is, but the consensus is that it's a minhag. So certainly a good thing to do. That's the bach, but one cannot give one's meiser money, the 10%. One can't give that to one's parents because that's a degrading thing to taking care of one's parents like it's a charity case. But one has to, if at all possible, give from one's other income. After one's parents comes one's children, actually, especially if one's children are greater than 6, whatever. Then there's no obligation per se from the Torah, but there's certainly taking care of one's children is the next most important, place for one to give. After that comes one's brothers, and one's sisters, one's siblings, one's uncles, one's family. That comes before anyone else. Then comes the poor people, one's neighbors and one's city. Then comes Aniyei Eretz Yisrael, poor people in Israel, which comes after one city. Then comes poor people in different cities. So there are different levels. Doesn't mean that one just gives to one and not give to everyone else. One should give to everyone. But in terms of the more priorities are those that are closer to oneself and has a great obligation to support. Again, it says one doesn't lose from tzedakah. I have actually a very nice story in my own family. There was a lady who lived in Yerushalayim. Her name was Rebbetzin Malka Isby, and there was a child in Yerushalayim who had a heart issue, and actually the biggest specialist was someone named Dr. Dubake, who lived in Houston, Texas. So this lady, Rebbetzin Isby, she found out about this child, and she went and she helped raise money for the operation and for the flight. And because the mother of the family of this boy didn't speak English, she actually went with them to Houston to go and help get the procedure done. And my grandparents, they should live and be well. They were living in Houston. They had a open kosher home for any person who wanted to have like kosher arrangements, a place to stay. They had an open home. They had people coming in all the time, staying in their house, and they would, and they were the place to be if you had to stop in Houston and wanted some hospitality. So she stayed by them, and they took her around. They went into all the doctors and helped with all the appointments, and they actually created this relationship with this Rebbetzin, and so she actually recommended they send their daughters to a Jewish school for high school. My mother went to Beis Yaakov in Denver, and actually at the end of the day, my mother, she and her son actually ended up introducing my parents to each other. So you see, from a lot of good things come from tzedakah, not just in this world, but this world, the next world. Says no one. The Rambam says, just read what the Rambam says, the olam ein adam ma'ani min tzedakah. You won't become poor by giving tzedakah. Ve'in davar rav lehezek nigal b'shul tzedakah. Nothing bad, no damage will come from tzedakah. Shneimar vayam masiyat tzedakah shalom. The action of tzedakah brings peace. Kol merachem merachem el. Anyone who has mercy on others, they will have mercy on him. Shneimar v'nascha rachmi racham chavibecha. He will give you mercy, and then he'll have mercy on you. And he says but another aspect of tzedakah is you have to give tzedakah with a smile. Meaning, Yisrael says if you give tzedakah with a frown and you're staring at the floor and you're like, oh, I really wish I wouldn't have to do this. He said even if he give him 1,000 gold coins, he lost his merit. But you should give it b'seir panim yafot, with a smile and with simcha, and you should feel bad for the person, and he should empathize, and he says, and he speak with him. And he says that if someone asks you for money, you shouldn't leave him empty-handed. Even giving him a little bit is also okay. And if you can't give him anything, you should talk to him and tell him, I really wish I could, but I just don't have. And the other thing is, let's go through the Rambam's list of the 8 malot. There are 8 levels of tzedakah. The first highest level is, which is what we said, someone who needs support, you give him a gift, you give him a loan, you make a partnership with him, you give him a job. That's the highest level. Less than that, you give tzedakah to poor people, but you don't know who you're giving to, and they don't know who they're taking from. He says they used to have a box in the base of Mikdash. People would anonymously drop off money there, and people who needed money would actually anonymously come and take money from it, so that no one knew who was giving, who was taking. Less than that, you know who you're giving to, but the poor person doesn't know who he's taking from, which is like the idea of a tzedakah fund. Like every city has people who give out tzedakah, that the people who are giving the money don't know who they're giving it from. Only the trustees of the fund know who's getting it. And less than that is is that the poor person knows who's getting it, but you don't know who you're giving it to. It says that a chacham would keep money and hold it behind his back and walk around in the poor section of town. People who needed money would take it from him, but he'd be staring at the floor all the time. He wouldn't see who was taking from him, but they knew who were taking it from. That's another level. The less is that you give before you're asked. Interesting. I never realized this. Even if you plan on giving tzedakah, it's better that you give them before they ask of you, because that way they don't have to ask. You save them that embarrassment of asking. Less that you give them after you ask, right? And then you give it to them. You give them less than what you should, but with a smile, and less that you give it to him, and you don't have a lot of simcha when you do it. That's the lowest level. So that's the. And then he speaks about how a person should certainly. If you don't need tzedakah, you shouldn't try and take it. But if you do need it, right? If someone is sick, someone is aged, someone is old, someone is not able to support himself, and he just too much pride, doesn't want to take tzedakah, that's not right. But someone who can, fine. Then the last thing I'll say is that just gonna just end off with a story. So there was someone in. I heard this from. There's a very, very great organization in Baltimore called Congregation Kneseth Israel that does a lot of. They support a lot of people. It's incredible how much they do. They help people in every way. Some people who need support. So there's a story that someone was backing out his car in the 7 Mile Market, and someone. There was a girl who was driving a car, and she hit his car. She rear-ended his car. So he gets out the car and talks to this girl. They don't really have insurance information. She said, "You know what? I don't know." She says, "Maybe you should talk to my mother. It's really hard for us to pay you so much." So, anyways, he calls up the girl's mother, and she said, "You know what? I can't pay you right the whole thing on the spot, but maybe we could do a payment plan, and over the time we'll sort of pay you every month till we pay you back." So he was wondering about this, are these family really? Do they really are not in a good financial state? So he calls up Congregation Kneseth Israel and says, the story happened. Does this family, do they really in financial need? And they said, "Well, we're not going to tell you that, but we'll actually pay you. We'll actually take care of the cost ourselves. You don't have to take from them." The person said, No, it's fine. I actually took care of it. I went to a body shop. I took care of the car. It's not the problem. I just concerned about this family. I really wanted to help them. So you know what? Can you here's my credit card number. Can you charge my card $50 every month, and you give it to that family? Yeah, that was the story. So we shall learn and give tzedakah, which is the best invest a person can have, and a tremendous mitzvah. And we should see the geula which will come in the merit of giving tzedakah. Siyum b'mishpat tipadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. Thanks.
I
Sure,
could
go
add
ahead.
something, if
Sure.
I could, just specifically with the Devar Torah you gave earlier with V'yikuli Truma as opposed to V'yitnuli. So Rabbi Zev Leff, who's the rabbi in Moshav Matityahu in Eretz Yisrael, wrote a Devar Torah on Truma. I just want to read some parts from it. He starts out talking about how the leaders basically offered to give whatever was needed after the fact, and how that was a mistake. They misunderstood about the giving. And as a result, a yud was taken away from their title, right? So he brings the Talmud in Baba Batra 10a, relates that the wicked Turnus Rufus once asked Rabbi Akiva, if your God loves the poor so much, why then doesn't he provide for them? Rabbi Akiva responded that Hashem could easily provide personally for the poor, but he chose to give us the merit of giving tzedakah, charity, to save us from Gehinnom. For this reason, says the Midrash in Ruth Rabbah 5:9, the poor person does more for the rich person than the rich person does for the poor person. When Naomi asked Ruth, who had provided Ruth with the food she brought home that day, Ruth answered, the man I did for today was Boaz. Boaz provided her with what God could have provided himself, but she provided him with the opportunity for a mitzvah, a chance to be godlike by giving to another. So that's kind of tells you a little bit about it. So really, when you're in a way, when you're giving tzedakah, you're taking the opportunity. You're actually taking a mitzvah.
Right.
So that's where the v'yikhu as opposed to v'yitnu is.
Beautiful.
You're taking the opportunity of a mitzvah as opposed to giving something. Also, remember where it all came from. All the valuables and so forth that were given as part of Truma all came from Egypt. Right. Which was what Hashem gave us in the first place, so it was from Hashem anyway. Right. So how can we give to Hashem what's already his? Right. So
yeah, great. I'll say add one thing just based on what you said. The truth is it's brought down. So a person might think, am I losing something by giving tzedakah? So there's two answers that the Torah says. He says the first one is we have to understand Hashem's one who really works. Hashem really is the one who gives people money. Like Hashem's really the one in charge of one's parnasah. Not all the money a person gets is all for himself. Sometimes a person gets more money than what he really needs for his own self. In order he should use that to give that to other people. It's a big thing. Hashem deposits money by us to give to others, and Hashem credits us for giving the money, even though Hashem gave us the money in the first place to give to others, right? Other thing the Torah says that he says it's known that no one loses by giving tzedakah. There are stories. I in my own life, someone who gives 10% of what they get, and then they find out they just get a check later. It's exactly like 10% of what exactly meant they gave tzedakah. They got the same thing back again. There is people have these type of stories. Right, exactly, right. So the other aspect is no one really loses, and I'm really gains. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boyachem leshuloim alachai yeshuloim malachai